to talk about the writing process. What's very important, and I want you to put this at the top of your sheet once again. We started and we ended last lecture with revise, rewrite, and repeat. Please write it down again. Revise, rewrite, repeat. And you're going, man, he doesn't know how good of a writer I am. Do you guys know what the average grade on the first assignment is? Yeah, somewhere, it's like a 70, a high, low 70s, okay? And you think you're so much better than the people that wrote the AP style book? So what does that tell you that you're going to need to do? Revise, rewrite, repeat. If I was you, and I've written 9 books and 28 articles and 5 films and won awards for TV shows. I've written a lot. You know, I have 6 degrees. If I was you, here's what I'd do. I'd type it up, print it, read it. Look for mistakes. Your job is to find your mistakes. Okay? And you can write this down if you want. Print it up. Read it out loud. Read it out loud. Come on. You're saying, oh, I don't need to read my stuff out loud. Yes, you do. You need to read it out loud. I had a grad student, Adam Castor, and I told him to read his letter of application to grad school out loud, and he didn't do it, and he kept making the same mistake. I even told him where the mistake was, but he didn't read it what? Out loud. And he didn't find the mistakes. After I do that 3 or 4 times, then I will tell my roommate, I'll give them ramen noodle, I'll take them out for a Subway if they read this for me and find 3 mistakes for me. The goal here for me as a writer is to someone to find mistakes. Okay? Do you understand? Then you find somebody who's your friend and you ask them to read it. Now here's what you do every time. You take the copy from your roommate where they love to find your mistakes. So you find them and then you change them on the computer and then you print it up again. Then you give it to somebody, your friend that you have lunch with, and you ask them to please read it and find, what do you want them to do? Find errors. I don't want anybody to read what I write and say, oh, you did a great job, smiley face. That's worthless to me. Worthless to me. Get it? I need them to find mistakes. Then my friend comes back, okay? Then maybe I got a significant other, a girlfriend, a boyfriend. I ask them to read it. And then please find mistakes, and then they give it to me. Then I take it to my mom. And I'm not kidding you. Last year, I had the opportunity to hang out. I hung out with Meryl Streep and Julia Roberts. I hung out under a tree for a whole hour with Ewan McGregor, okay? Because George Clooney was producing this film called August, Osage County, and I really wanted him to make this film I wrote. So I snuck onto the set, okay? I did, man. I stuck on the set. And I knew the main security guy, and I would use the force, like, he will not see me. And I would find the tree. We're in the hills of Oklahoma, and I'd find the tree and always have between me and the head of security was the tree. And they offered me, like, an avocado salad. And I had a script out like I belonged. You know, I was just like, you know, I kind of looked like this, and I was just like, you know, just standing around. The little girl from Little Miss Sunshine, I hung out with her and her teacher, acting like I belonged. Anyways, the point is, I wrote a letter to George Clooney. You know who I had read it? My mom and dad live in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, where they're shooting the movie. You know who I had read it? My mom. And she read it, and I said, please find mistakes. And she found 3 mistakes. Then you know what I did after that? Take a guess. I went to the computer, made changes, gave it to her again, and said, please find mistakes. Do you understand? If I need to do that, you need to do it. And look, I never tracked down George Clooney. Finally, the head of security saw me. And I was like, I'm not causing a problem for anybody. He's like, you just caused me a giant problem. Because one of the crew saw me and was like, he's been here for an hour. Who is he? Right? Well, the head of security was supposed to know who I was, right? So he was hacked because he wasn't doing his job because I was there. He said, yeah. Yeah, no, you go do it. He was like, you will be gone now. I have 12 Oklahoma Highway Patrol on the way as you leave. Because actually Meryl Streep was in a car and they were shooting this car scene. And I was hanging out with the rest of everybody else waiting for her to get back. But the point was, I had to get out of Dodge before I found George Clooney, but I found the house he was at, and I hung the script with the letter on his back door. I didn't want to bang on his door. I through detective work, I found the house he was staying at, but I didn't bang on his door because I didn't want to abuse his privacy. What's my point? My point is if I'm going to take a letter to George Clooney, what am I going to do? What? Revise, rewrite, and repeat. And revise, and rewrite, and repeat. And revise. Do you get it? Yeah. Everything I write has to be revised, rewritten, and repeated. Do you want a 70 on your first assignment? Rewrite it 4 times and you'll be great for a 70. Okay? After you do all of that, take it to the Visor Center. Because there are people that are trained in this class. They have my textbook. They have AP. And look, at every stage of the way, they are not going to find everything that can be improved. Do you understand that? And after you take it to the Visor Center, take it to these guys. All right? After the Visor Center, you'll go, well, will you read my thing? And what will you say?
Did you take it to the Visor Center?
No, not yet. Yeah, you say, call now. I'll say it right now. Call now for an appointment today because they get really backed up. Write it down. Call Visor Center for an appointment. Don't write it down and be happy with your 68, okay? All right? Don't complain to us when you get the 68 because I am telling you right now to make an appointment with the Visor Center. So please, don't take it out on us when you don't take it to the Visor Center. When you call next Monday and they say, sorry, we don't have any appointments, don't be mad at us, okay, please? Because all we're doing is our job, which is trying to push you to rigor. Did I make myself clear? After the Visor Center, and then you make the changes, take it to them. And then go make changes, and then I would be delighted to read it. But they're your editor. You don't want to show your editor draft work. I mean, Steinbeck said the first draft of anything is what? Actually, it was Ernest Hemingway, but he said the first draft of anything is, and you don't want to show him that. And I'm your publisher. So you don't want to show it to me and make it a bad impression before you go through your editor. Does everybody understand? I can't emphasize that enough. Because the time is now. When is this assignment due? 2 weeks, so it's time, ladies and gentlemen, to get all these revisions and rewriting. Who's going home this week? Who's going to see Mom this weekend? She'll read it for you, won't she? Please have it for her. She wants to read it, doesn't she? Yeah, she does. I'm trying to make this point ad nauseum. Are you about to throw up?
I'm throwing up right now.
Yeah? Yeah, you're swallowing it back down? Yeah, are you tired of me saying this? Okay, cool. Great. Yes, ma'am. Do you know how to email it to them, please? Do not. Then it's their responsibility to print it. The School of Communication is like, you guys, what is your opinion? No. If it's not your time, worth your time to print it up and bring it to them. I want to edit a hard copy. That's what I want to do. I want to mark on a hard copy and give it back to you. You'll have to ask them. Did you guys agree with me?
I want a hard copy.
He wants a hard copy. No, well, all right, man, I want a hard copy because I want to mark it up and give it back to you, and then you make the changes, okay? And Kenneth, you're going to be helping too, right? You're going to help us? You're going to hang out and read their material and help these guys as they try to help them. After it goes, don't bring it to them till it's gone through at least 5 or 6 revisions, okay? Okay, I belabor the point, but it is a very important point. I have to give this part of the lecture, Grace, every semester, okay? It's just what I got to do. Because when I'm writing, and I've already said this, when I rented the limo to pick up, what's his name, Danny Glover, and I'm paying $2,000 an hour for a studio in Manhattan. No. Oh, really? Oh, wow. I didn't wear this shirt. Or maybe I did, but it didn't have a hole in it by then. Here, can I? Said help. Anyways, listen. How many versions do you think that script went through? I'm taking Danny Glover to the studio. I'm paying for the limo. I'm paying $2,000 an hour for the studio time. It's going on my documentary. How many revisions did it cut? At least 30, 43. You know what one the biggest one was? Is rewriting it 30 times, then having Dr. Lippert do a scratch track where he did the voiceover that Glover was going to later do. Then showing it to you guys and getting your opinion about whether you thought the voiceover was clear, concise, correct, and complete. And then rewriting it based on your guys' opinion. You see what I'm saying? I mean, and that was revision number 36. The night before I was in New York. I'm going to pick him up the next morning. And I noticed that the last word of a line was centered rather than flush left. And that makes it so I want him to be able to go from right to left. And if there's a word at the end of a paragraph that's in the middle, it makes it harder to see. So I made like revision number 55 by putting it to the right. What did I do in New York that night before I did Danny Glover? I'm talking to you and her. What did I do that night? I'm talking to you. What did I do the night before I picked up Danny Glover? No. The woman in the white shirt right there with, yes, you. What did I do before when I picked up Danny Glover the night in New York before I took him to the studio? What did I do the night before? I rewrote it again. I revised it again. So I'm pardoned to get your attention. I know you got other important stuff to do, but I'm trying to teach you something from my experiences. And that's really what this is all about, right? Is that I had to make the 55th revision in New York that night. Okay, so far be it for you to have to make a revision. Okay, you see what I'm saying? I'm just trying to help you guys. You get it? Because, you know, I don't care what grade you make. I don't. As a matter of fact, I think grades are overrated. What I should be concerned with about is learning more. You think Socrates gave grades? You think the greatest Jewish teacher in the world, after the Sermon on the Mount, took a quiz? No. I would hope that you're here because you want to learn. If you're not, just don't come. Although we will note that. Please pass around the attendance sheet to give them credit for being here. So anyways, I guess I digress. The point is revise, rewrite, repeat, right? Now, when we left off the other day, we were talking, and I need to go back to online research. Can stuff online ever be wrong? Photoshop, you gotta love it, right? We noted, remember, I stopped with the example of the student who misspelled the name of Ice Ice Baby, right? What's his name? Vanilla Ice, Matthew Van Winkle. And he went to the web and he got the name off of an 8th grader's web page and it was misspelled. Remember? So the web isn't a great place always. You got to scrutinize your sources, right? Now I also want to say there's another great place to use to do research. It's a building. You know that crosswalk that goes over college? On the one side there's the Bone Student Center that's celebrating its 50 years. On the other side there's a big building. Anybody know what it's called? A library, and they have these things in there that you open up, and they're made out of like trees. They're called books. Books are a great resource. Okay, so don't underestimate the value of a library and reading books. Okay, as we talk about research, go ahead, go past this. Yeah, because we already talked about that, and the rule of third. Remember, how many people remember what I said about the rule of third? Should we have a quiz? Bridget says, if I see it more than 3 times, come on, some more people. Remember what I said about it? How many times do you have to read that the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776 before you stop citing sources? 3. But you're an expert on it, so you don't need to cite anything, do you? But before that, you do. Otherwise, if you depend too much on any one source of information, you might be committing... Yeah, who said it? Misappropriation. Excellent, ma'am. Thank you. Misappropriation. And it can be plagiarism, but I want you to know the word misappropriation. Very good answer, ma'am. That's relying on any one source too much. Yes.
And that's true even in our essay, we find it more than we're just like, nah, just like
When we get to radio and television news, you're going to research 6 different articles about a given topic, and then you're going to become an expert. Okay? So that question is premature. It's not important until we get to the radio news story. But yes, you're going to read it 3 or 4 or 5 times and then go, I know that. Did the Bears win yesterday or lose? Yeah? All right, he's wearing his shirt. Okay, good. So you don't have to cite somebody to say the Bears won because you already know it, right? All right, great. So that's researching online and reading it, and then the rule of terms and misappropriation is going to be on the test. So she's ready for you're ready for that test question. Number 19, that's right. There's also research through observation. Does anybody know who Hunter S. Thompson is? Yes. Gonzo journalism. So he says, man, I want to know about the Hells Angels. So what's the best way to learn about the Hells Angels? To read about them? Join them. That's right. So Hunter S. Thompson starts hanging out with Hell Angels, doing the things they do. Riding a motorcycle, consuming crazy substances, hanging out when there's larceny being committed. But because then he knows what it's all about. What is embedded reporters? Yes, ma'am. That's right. Embedded reporters were used in a lot of the last Gulf War, where we put reporters in a company or a platoon of soldiers so that the reporter could see what it was like to actually be a soldier. Okay? So this is research through there's one thing to look at maps and to look at people in a battle, and that's research through observation. But go on. Don't. Research through observation. You can have general observation. Now, the problem is the Rashomon effect, okay? And that is, we all come to a situation with a particular consciousness, with a particular memory, and we lend our own opinion when we see something. Okay, look, here's the deal, is... I ask Grace about what's on his computer. An equality symbol, and what else? Dell, okay. If you're looking at it from that perspective, when I say what's on his computer, I'm seeing that there's Google Keep on his computer. Okay? Are you wrong, Grace? No. Am I wrong? We're just looking at it from a different perspective. That's the Rashomon effect. Is that I look at things from a perspective. And it's not just a physical perspective, but it's also my experiences. Look, if I'm a young Hispanic male and I've been pulled over a lot, maybe racially profiled, and they pull me over for no reason and try to look at my driver's license to see if I may or may not be a citizen, I'm going to start looking at the immigration issue a little than this shanty white Mick over here, who maybe that was a problem, they were when my ancestors were stumbling out of a bar and talking with their Irish accent, we may have been stopped to make sure we were, supposed to be in this country, right? But your experiences taint how you look at an issue or a situation. Do you guys understand that? That's the Rashomon effect. And I'm not going to get in the Kurosawa film where I get it, but somebody define the Rashomon effect for me. You in the green shirt back there. What is the Rashomon effect? I just said it. Who else will tell me what it is? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you look at it from a different point of view as somebody else. I mean, we look at our... I'm sorry, this is a little... We look at our toilet, and we're like going to the bathroom in clean water. There are people in Uganda, my little girl Maggie just got back from Uganda a couple weeks ago, and there are people there who walk 5 miles to get dirty water. And when they hear that we go to the bathroom and clean drinkable water, they're freaked out. They can't even comprehend it. You see what I'm saying? Because they come from a totally different perspective. I mean, it's only 10% of the world that has electricity running into their house, ladies and gentlemen. We take it for granted we can flip a light on. But most of the world, they don't know anything about that. So you see how we can have different perspectives about things? And that affects how we see things. Do you guys understand? And that's the Reiserman effect. It's about perspective. Also, observation may change action. Look, are you going to act a different way if I got a camera in front of you? Yeah, you are. If I have a camera right in front of you, say, make sure you write this down. Okay, well, maybe you won't. Some people don't. Actually, after a while, most of us don't. I mean, look at Jersey Shore, man. There's a camera there. It didn't stop Snooki from being drunk at 10 a.m. and falling face first. Yeah, she fell face first into the sand, and then she was arrested. JWoww was like, I told her not to do that. She was going to get arrested. Do I? Great. But the point is, people act differently when you point a camera at them. They usually do. So the observer affects the observed. That's why observation, research. All right, but what I can do is, this next idea is there's a difference between etic knowledge, which is, there's this participant, no, that's where you need to be. Hunter S. Thompson started Gonzo's journalism, or really a continuation of, because Hemingway, for whom the bell tolls, about the Spanish Civil War in 1938 through 1939, he went there to write about it, right? You want to be there in it to know what it's like. And that's what Hunter S. Thompson was all about. If I want to know what it's like to be on the campaign trail for Nixon, I have to be on a bus. And I have to try to live as close as I can to the experience so I know something about it. Does that make sense? And this may not be as relevant to this class, but I would be remiss. We should probably put Hunter S. Thompson and Gonzo journalism on Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. There's nothing like a man on an ether binge. If you're going to write about an ether binge, I wouldn't advise that you do it. Read Hunter S. Thompson and read the experience of somebody that did do it. It's hard to get on Circus Carnival ride when you're... There's nothing like a man on an ether binge, man. Your mind does not control your legs, right? Anyways. Hunter S. Thompson wanted to know about the 60s, so what did he do? He did the 60s, but his writing was awesome as a result. If you're gonna study something, live it, be in it, okay? Because etic knowledge is looking at stuff from the outside. Emic knowledge is, I'm now an insider and I know what it feels like to be involved in this thing. If I'm gonna the Occupy Wall Street people, to greater or lesser success, whatever. If you really want to know what it was like, you could interview them. But maybe better is to hang out with them, right? Derek? Yeah. Because now you've got a lived knowledge. It's the difference between the French connaît and the French savoir. Connaît is to know something intellectually. Savoir is to know it in your heart. Yeah. Have you ever had your heart broken? Do you know what heartbreak is? Oh, yeah, I've seen lots of movies. But unless you've really had some woman just take out your heart and throw it on the ground and just stomp on it with her stiletto high heels, you'll never know what it really is to have your heart broken. You know what I mean? Am I making sense? It's the difference between knowing something in your mind and knowing cognitive and know something affective. Yes. Etic is from the outside, and emic is from the inside. And actually, that won't be on the test, but that's a great question. And it's more, it's a good question. Etic, at least I want you to understand that if I look over there and see those people doing a thing, I may have some knowledge of them doing it. Etic, but I'm an outsider looking in, right? Emic is where I go ahead and do the thing with them and become one of them, so then I know what it feels like. Does that make sense? I've seen a movie about somebody getting their heart break. I know about it. That's etic. I saw a friend of mine had his heart broken really bad one time. Versus actually going through it and then really knowing it. Savoir. You know. Morte more, you know. But you guys, yeah, I don't know French very well, obviously. Cheat français. But you guys get my point, right? That's the difference. Now, the last thing I think here is very important because it's going to tie in. I'd put a star by it. At the Oracle of Delphi in Greece, it says, know thyself. Know what your predispositions, what your prejudices are. Do you have prejudices? Man, I just had to do 4 hours of an online class for Arizona driving school because some officer of the peace was training some other young officer of the peace about how to clock somebody on the highway, and I happen to be going 9 miles over the limit in Winslow, Arizona, okay? So they gave me a ticket. So yesterday, I spent 4 hours doing an online course. I have a bias against those policemen from Winslow, Arizona. Now, I did say to him, you know, I really like your Senator, John McCain. You know, because we tend to be Democrats, but we sent him money for New Hampshire when he ran against Bush, and I voted for him a couple times in the primaries. He was like, yeah, okay, great. And then I found out this weekend that at the hearings about bombing Syria, where John Kerry, Secretary of State, was telling Congress about why we should intervene, John McCain was playing video poker during the most important part. Porter asked about him, and he was like, hey, well, what can I say? I did lose $1,000 that hand. I don't know, man. Now I've got a predisposition against John McCain, right? You see, I have a bias a little bit against McCain. What do you do to lose $1,000 when we're talking about American service people dropping bombs on Syrians? What are you doing? You know what I mean? Do you see that I developed a prejudice? Do you have a prejudice? You got no prejudices? What is a prejudice? Yes.
Kind of like
a biased feeling towards a certain group of people. And I need to recognize, man, I'm sorry, but I'm going to beg to differ. I think people with a face mask on and a gun in their hand, you have a prejudice about them. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I have a prejudice about Nazis, man. I hate them. Especially Illinois Nazis. You guys might be biased against them too. I have prejudice against them. Ku Klux Klan members. You know, I can't stand Ku Klux Klan members. Shut up the camera for a second. Turn it up again. I'm sorry, I do not like the Ku Klux Klan, and I have a bias against them. All right? Pardon? But I don't like the Klan, okay? But I need to know thyself. So when I'm interviewing a Klan member, okay? When I'm interviewing a Klan member, what does Sandman say about objectivity? Raise your hand. I'm sorry, it's horrible, isn't it? Is he explaining it to you? Just leave it. Just don't worry about it. I hate Klans members. I hate anybody that has ethnic biases or racial hatreds. That's stupid. I just want to drown them. Anyways, I'm sorry. I know. I got to know that about myself. You know what I mean? I got to recognize that about myself. What does Sandman say about objectivity? Yes. Man, Joe always hits it on the head. Got it. Sandman says objectivity is a good goal, but total objectivity is impossible. And what does Sandman call that? What is that concept? What do we call it? What's the theory? Come on, it's on the test. Yes, sir. Dialectic. That's not the answer, but thank you for playing. It's very close. Yes, sir. Here, dilemma of objectivity. You need to write it down. If you don't know it, I'm not doing my job. Write down dilemma of objectivity. Remember this theory? It's back in your notes, and I told you it's going to be on the test. But good try, man. I mean, really, I appreciate it. Yeah, you got it really close. It's right above it. Dialectic theory is how we can overcome the fact that we can't be objective by privileging the other side. So your answer is really good. You know what I mean? It was wrong. It's the dilemma of objectivity that objectivity is impossible, but through the dialectic, seeking out and favoring the other side, we can be more objective. So know thyself, know your biases. I think, know thyself. Dorical Delphi, all right? And then, okay, you guys get that? Dilemma of objectivity, you understand it? Comprende, capiche? All right. Come on, don't shake your head when you know it. You know it, don't you? Do you understand dilemma of objectivity and Sandman? Yeah, I know you do, Bridget. Good job. All right. Interviewing. This is another way that we can do research, isn't it? Interviewing. What is interviewing? Tell me. Raise your hand. Yes, sir. Wow, you were the only person raising your hand. Good. Answering questions or asking questions to get answers from somebody. Excellent. We might do that when this is not a reporting class, and you do not need to do this for your first assignment, so I'm not going to go in a bunch of detail about it. I'm just going to say that's another way to research, okay, is interviewing. You understand that? And really, there's two things. For print, we can get information. Later, for broadcast, we get actualities. What are actualities also known as? Yes. What? And they can be phone interviews, but they also can be in person. Yes, sir. Sound bites. Write that down. Put a star by it. It's another question on the test. Actualities are sound bites. Right? You know, you listen to the radio, they said, the president says the economy will continue to improve. And then you hear the president's voice. I can only see that this economy is going to get better and better. Right? That's a soundbite. It's an actuality. Okay? Or on TV. Right? TV news, they cut to somebody, ask them what their opinion is. So actualities are sound bites. I don't want to go into the rest of this now, so don't write it. You don't need to write it down. I just want you to write actualities is a soundbite. You have a question, Summer.
I was just wondering what implied consent is.
Oh, implied consent. When you're videotaping someone and they're looking at the camera and answering your questions.
It's okay if you videotape.
Yeah, I mean, a court of law, they're giving an implied consent. But I don't want to get into that. We'll get into legalities later, and I'm not a lawyer, okay? Right? So, but if they're looking at the camera and answering your questions, there's a contract. They're kind of agreeing that you can use their image. Now, then, in that case, you may need to get a waiver from them saying it's okay, all right? And then, off the record, just be very careful about saying off the record anytime you do an interview, okay? But I'm going to talk about this more later when we actually need to do interviews, okay? So let's go past this and just know for this purposes that interviewing is asking questions for answers and sound bites are actualities, all right? So we've talked about this writing process, have we not? And what we do is the first process is we start to develop our concept. Now, most of that has already been done for you, right? Sir, do you know what story you're going to write about? Hard. I mean, at this point, you guys should be crafting, okay? And let me say about that, you're figuring out, okay, which of these stories do I want to do? How many people are going to use one of the 4 stories? Okay, good. You need to be studying it, and you need to be doing AP work on that now as you develop your concept. Is this AP? Okay? But you're developing your concept. How many people are doing PR? Do you have your concept, kind of? Okay, well, you need to be action on that, making some decisions about it at this point. Really, because you need a draft of this. If I was you, I'd want a draft of this by, like, now, actually, but Wednesday or Thursday. So I can have people looking at it later this week, and then over the weekend get some more eyes on it. I mean, I really would. Nobody's going to read it closer than your mom, and then your dad. I don't know why I didn't have my dad read it. I think he was busy watching CSI or something. Yes. Wow, that is, yes, absolutely. Here's what I would suggest is your very good question. You are on it today. What's your name? Ida, I know that. I have you written right here, Ida. Ida's rocking today, okay? But this is what I'd say is they aren't going to read it until you've taken it to the Visor, V-I-S-O-R Center. I'm going to ask them to come speak to you, the Visor Center. I should do that. Will you remind me? Actually, will you get a hold of the Visor Center and have them send somebody over to talk to this class?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Give it up for him. Yeah. But based on Ida's suggestion, what I would say is if you have a draft of your story ready for Friday, bring it to class. And then after class, or towards the end of class, guys, you students can swap it and take a look at it and proofread it for each other. Sound like a good plan, Ida? I mean, and it may be after the lab, you're outside in the hall, you grab some seats, and you swap with some people. Does that make sense? I think your suggestion is awesome. Do you guys get that? Totally voluntary. If you want another set of eyes, and just in the 4 or 5, 6 that you're going to have on it, bring a draft to your lab and have classmates, swap it with classmates, and you guys try to facilitate it, okay? Towards the end of class, and how many people brought it? All right, you guys swap. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to do that like out in the hall because our next group is coming in, depending on time. But Ida, great suggestion, okay? Yes, sir. No, not necessarily. But don't take a bunch of facts. I don't want it based on facts. I want imaginative free variation. Yeah, use this name, but don't sit on facts and try to be respectful of the man who deserves respect. I mean, he is a killer artist, and he also is a political spokesperson. So, but you're making up stuff about what he's going to do in 2014. Okay, right? So. You don't have to change his name to protect the innocent. We know it's nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Okay? Is that cool? Does that answer your question? Very good question. You don't have to change the names to protect your innocent in a public relations press release that's issued for some unforeseeable future. Does that make sense? If you had the question, other people had it, so thank you. Yes, sir. Is it Dalton? It's not? You're Dalton. I'm sorry. Okay, well, that was almost close. Yes. What's your name? What's that? Nick. Okay, Nick. Your question is?
Well, I mean, so in other words, you can do a press release. I mean, it can involve real
What is that?
things, but
I bring a pen.
it's like, but it can be like, in other words, what I'm saying is it can involve like, real things, but it can be like totally fake.
Yes, it can involve real things, but it can be totally fake. Put it in the future. For a press release. Not for a news story. If you're doing a news story, you use one of the 4 scenarios given. Was that clear in Friday's lab? Yeah, but it's a good question, Nick. Thank you. Somebody else has a question. Did I answer it?
He was clarifying.
Yeah, I guess. So in other words, I can like, write about some company and like say they're doing X, Y, Z.
Yeah, they've invented the flying car. Could you imagine drunk driving then? They could do it a flying car, but they are not going to do it, man. I mean, have you driven I don't want to be ageist, so I won't. Drunk driving can be real. Bad drivers would be really bad in flying cars, What's that? Fight Club? Oh, yeah, that was drunk driving. He didn't do a half bad job. But he had a lot of experience, too. I mean, you want to be driving? I don't want to be driving with Maggie when she's working on her driver's permit in a flying car. I mean, we're not just scraping the curb, okay? We're like... Oh, there you go. Anyway, I digress. Nick, you can write about flying... Ford develops flying cars. And Flight was good, and he did do a really good job. It's amazing what a talented flyer on cocaine and junk can do. But it's Denzel, man. Denzel can do anything. He's Denzel, There was a question. Yes?
So, can you do a press release and put it in PR?
Yeah, sure you can. Yes, sir. Yeah, you can. Because you never know. I'm going to tell you later how press releases can change the world. I was given advice last night to a woman who's organizing in our community. She wants to get Bill Brady to do something. She's not a political activist. She's not a PR person, but I was telling her, how do you do a press release where you we in a democracy can use mass media even if we're not PR people. We can use press. We can use public relations to make a change, but I'll talk about that. Public relations has changed our world. Giving us women's right to vote, 40-hour work week, abandoned child labor laws, given universal, the people that don't own property can vote, all because of public relations, okay? But I digress. I want to get through. You get through concept formulation, then you plan. This is outlining. Outlining. Write down planning, outlining. This isn't going to be really hard because you already know the organizational sequence. You need to be right, man, I think. Okay. What's the organizational sequence of this first story? Inverted pyramid. What is the organizational strategy, organizational sequence for your first story? Inverted pyramid. What is the organizational structure of your first story? What is the organizational structure of your first story? All right, so planning is kind of done for you a little bit, but you have to decide what is most important, and then you have to go to what is least important, right? Next, we want to talk about listing. And that's really where we're listing. What is the most important thing in the story, and what are the least important things in the story, right? Because that's how you're going to organize your story, from most important to least important. So you're listing in order of importance from most to least. Then you're drafting, and that's the fourth thing. Go ahead. Drafting. My suggestion here is write